quickly. Before we start, I would like to welcome you back from all members from the local government election campaign. We must congratulate all of you and the public generally, and especially those who voted to ensure that democracy continues to be the way we make decisions. We acknowledge that there are reasons that others may have chosen not to vote, but we wish that everything we do, especially as this parliament, will ensure that as many of our people will make a difference in future. So let's give a round of applause to all the people who got involved, the IEC especially, and the work it did, and the mistakes that it may have made that will be corrected. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Motion on the paper is the order in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move that the House elects Ms. N. Mapisa Ngakula, Speaker of the National Assembly, to replace Ms. T.R. Modisa as a member of the delegation representing Parliament in the Southern African Development Community Parliamentary Forum in terms of Article 6, subsection 3 of the Constitution of the Forum. I so move.
And now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order.
The first order. Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriations on second special appropriation bill.
Thank you, Honorable Sfiso Buthelezi.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Member, just 1 second. Just 1 second.
Remember, the first was the motion.
No. Look at this.
Look at this. Yes. Must start because remember, Chief Whip moved the motion, and then we go to the first order.
Okay.
Which is the report.
All right.
And
Okay.
then you're going to recognize him.
Baba, sicela uhlale phansi kancane. Senze iphutha. Yes. Secretary, please read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriations on second special appropriation bill.
Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I move that this report be adopted. Thank you very much.
Are there any objections to the Chief Whip's request? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order.
First reading debate, second special appropriation bill.
So ngakhuluma nathi mfowethu lungu elihloniphekileyo Buthelezi.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Minister of Finance Enoch Kotongwane, Deputy Minister of Finance Dr. Masondo, Honorable members, fellow countrymen, it gives me great pleasure to pronounce...
And women.
Fellow countrymen and women, thank you. It gives me a great pleasure to pronounce loud and clear here that the African National Congress supports the second special appropriation bill, Bill 17-2021. What does the bill seek to do? The bill follows the announcement by His Excellency President Ramaphosa on 25 July 2021 that government will intervene again to help those businesses that were hard hit by unrest, mainly in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Also, he announced the continuation of the safety net of the 350 Rand SRD grant until the end of March 2022 to the most vulnerable sections of our society who continue to be ravaged by COVID-19 pandemic. The President said, I quote, "We need to provide support and relief to poor households in order to alleviate the hardships they are going through and reduce hunger," unquote. He continued to say, I quote, "We need to help businesses to rebuild," unquote. The bill in front of us, honorable members, is the concretization of this undertaking. This is a clear demonstration that this government, led by the African National Congress, will never forsake South Africans who are experiencing hardships. Before I proceed, Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me thank former Minister of Finance, Honorable Tito Mboweni, for the constructive way engaged with the committee under very difficult conditions. In the same vein, we congratulate our brand new Minister of Finance, Honorable Enoch Godongwana. We are looking forward to working with you as we try to grow the economy and improve the lives of our people. The second special appropriation bill proposes additional urgent funding allocations in the current fiscal year of 32.85 billion rand. It also includes expenditure authorized by the Minister of Finance in terms of Section 16 of PFMA for the extension of SRD grant and support for businesses. The allocation is as follows. Department of Social Development gets 26.7 billion rand. Department of Trade, Industry and Competition gets 1.3 billion rand. National Treasury gets 3.9 billion rand, mainly to recapitalize SASRA. SNDF gets 700 million rand. Police gets 250 million rand. Chairperson, allow me, Deputy Speaker, allow me to add that the intervention through this bill was in addition to other support packages that the government had introduced, like tax deferrals, etc. These interventions were possible mainly because of the windfall from the good performance of commodities. Also, departments were encouraged to prioritize within their budgets to deal with this shock. The fiscal and social positions of the country remains constrained. The macroeconomic indicators attest to this reality: high unemployment rate, high debt to GDP ratio, unacceptable levels of inequality and poverty. This unequal economy is not sustainable, and it's not good for business and potential investors. Apartheid was bad, remains bad, and it ravaged the lives of our people in many ways. It should be clear even to the denialists that when we rebuild this economy, we should take everybody on board. The President talks of the silver lining in the dark cloud. Financial and Fiscal Commission agreed that this was a necessary expenditure since, quote, these largely constituted non-discretionary spending, unquote. We agree with the FFC that this should not undermine infrastructure spending. While the Parliamentary Budget Office also agrees with the necessity of this intervention, they further argue that, I quote, the risk associated with COVID-19 should be budgeted for going forward so that we do not have this special appropriation, unquote. Honourable members, based on the survey done by DTIC after the July unrest, the following was found. 1,099 businesses were negatively impacted in the two provinces. Potential loss orders of about 16.8 billion rand over a period of 12 months going forward. Approximately 14,016 jobs will be lost. Most businesses reported a combination of damages, including temporary business closures, damages to stock, buildings, shop fittings, equipment, and supply chain disruptions. Honorable Deputy Speaker, that is why we congratulate government, the cabinet, and the Minister of DTIC, Minister Patel, IDC, and NEF for the lightning speed response to the unfortunate July events. This is based, honorable members, on our belief that the only way we'll get out of our problems is that we get our economy back to its growth path. Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, it gives me pleasure to share with this August House the fact that NTTIC, through its institutions, decided to respond even before Parliament considers this bill. IDC has approved application of 45 businesses to the value of 1.68 billion rand, of which 794 million rand has been disbursed. Similarly, About 900 million rand has been approved and or disbursed by the National Empowerment Fund since July towards the restoration of 143 businesses. This will save about 7,316 jobs, which are much needed in our struggling economy. We thank the Solidarity Fund for working with DTIC and NEF in addressing the aftermath of the July unrest. They contributed 150 million rand towards rebuilding businesses after the unrest. Some good stories from some of the beneficiaries who thought their wealth had come to an abrupt end. In Umzinto, Sipho and Wiseman Jikija are sugarcane farmers. Sipho says that he's grateful for the timeous IDC funding and hopes to make his father proud by restructuring the running of the farm and making sure that it yields even greater returns in the new year. Miss Mtoi, who owns Icebolet Funeral Services with branches in KZN, Gauteng, and Eastern Cape, a 100% woman-owned business and has 1,000 employees, also benefited from the DTIC Fund Economic Recovery Fund that is managed by NEF. She is very grateful, not just of saving of her business, but more importantly, the saving of the jobs and livelihoods of her 1,000 employees. Honorable members, you will remember the company who conducted the sending off of His Majesty King Zwelithini. That was Icebolet. This shows that working together, there is no mountain too steep to climb. The African National Congress supports the second special appropriation bill.
Honorable de Villiers.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The second Special Appropriations Bill is not what it seems on paper. It appears to want to do good, to assist South Africans suffering from the dual crisis of extended lockdowns and civil unrest, both of which are consequences of ANC policy. But it does not deal with the fundamental problems in the main appropriation bill. It directs additional revenue to SASRIA, and that is correct. The DA welcomes the 3.9 billion rand appropriation to ensure that claims from the ANC-inflicted July civil unrest can be paid out. However, the simple fact remains that if crime intelligence did its job and stayed on top of the reports that such violence was imminent, and moved to deal with the instigators, we could have avoided those days of fear, those days of destruction of property, and those days of loss of life. To date, there have been no report of any arrests, except maybe one, of these so-called instigators, and there has been no concerted effort to arrest or prosecute those who cause such harm, that threaten to tear apart the very fabric of our nation. To add insult to injury, the ANC politicians who have round-the-clock VIP protection is estimated to cost the taxpayers 1.7 billion rand this financial year. VIP protection. If the ANC was serious about putting the needs of people and not themselves first, they would have dispensed with the bulk of this VIP protection, this expenditure, and moved it all into crime prevention and the areas that was hardest hit by the unrest or other areas of extreme levels of crime. Instead, the original appropriation to VIP protection services remains unchanged, even as our economy suffers the effects of lockdowns and civil unrests. Secondly, while the DA welcomes the extension of the social relief of distress grants until April 2022, the harsh reality is that the grant still falls far short of the food poverty line, which presently is estimated to be 624 rands a month. Heinrich. So, years of corruption and failed projects has emptied the fiscus and now the ANC has no fiscal space to take care of South Africans in need, and are papering over the cracks of their failed policies. No grant system in the world is sustainable on the backs of a shrinking tax base, and South Africa is no exception. The simple reality is that decades of bad ANC economic policy is now taking its toll on the poor and the vulnerable. The only sustainable path out of poverty is decent jobs. Most poor and vulnerable South Africans would want a job that pays 6,000 Rand a month, not the grant that pays 350 Rand a month. But many South Africans cannot find work because the ANC remains committed to failed ideological commitments that should have died with the collapse of the Berlin Wall. The ANC has achieved just one thing with its economic policies: the deindustrialization of the South African economy. The industrial sector, by some estimates, has shrunk to its lowest level in 60 years. This special appropriation bill does nothing to reform South Africa. It does nothing to save industrial output. It does nothing to trim the fat in the budget that the ANC feeds off. It should have been an opportunity to open the door for future reforms and to showing citizens that the government is willing to cut its waste and place the needs of citizens first. Instead, the ANC opportunity uses budgeting to show South Africa its real priorities, putting themselves and their own selfish needs first, the needs of ordinary citizens last. The DA will not support any appropriation that does not cut VIP protection for politicians and bring savings for the poor. We cannot support this bill or any finance bill until the immorality of the ANC's approach to budgeting comes to an end. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Ntlangwini. Honorable members, keep the volumes down. When you scream, you really create problems for us. Please be mindful here. I know you've been working hard, but please, you are back in the house now.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The Special Appropriation Bill before the National Assembly is called a Special Appropriation Bill because government wants Parliament's permission to spend additional funding that was not approved with the Appropriation Bill. The bill seeks to appropriate an additional 32.8 billion for social grants to all the affected by COVID-19 and an additional funding for the SASRIA to pay businesses affected by the unrest we witnessed in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng and deployment of soldiers on our streets. The fact of the matter is that there is nothing exceptional or unusual about the appropriation bill before the National Assembly today. We are just here to rubber stamp decisions that are already made, Mr. Hope, without consultation and sometimes bordering on dictatorship. The reality is that Parliament has given all its constitutional and legislative power to the executive, and we are expected to treat matters that are not special as special. We are requested here to appropriate money used for deployment of soldiers when we want that you could not start with soldiers and police to address unhappiness in society. Where were the leaders of society to speak directly to their people, the people they claim to lead? Yet the cowards who claim to be leaders are why we must spend billions on avoidable expenditure, money that we could have used to begin extending the COVID-19 social relief grants. We did not form part of the legitimizing the deployment of army when we invited all the leaders to engage stakeholders to bring calm, and we are not going to do so and do it now. we want to put it on record. We do not support the additional allocation for the senseless deployment of soldiers. Instead of intervening in Mozambique timelessly, we send soldiers to the backyards that there are no violence on. On Sasria, every year, they present an annual report and have always been firm that they have enough cash on their books to cover risks. However, they were exposed now. We must relook the Sasrial model and how best to prepare the eventualities, particularly given that the high levels of poverty, unemployment, and crime. We live with permanent threats of social unrest, and it cannot be that every time there's an unrest chairperson, there must be a special appropriation of billions when there is a state insurance company that must prepare for such unrest. Lastly, we must extend the COVID-19 social relief grant beyond March 2022. Our people are unemployed, especially the youth, and more depressing situations worse than they were before COVID-19. We do want to put on record that the EFF do support this grant. The little they get makes a difference, but it will need to be paid for an even more extended period and more efficient way. We reject the appropriation bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Hlengwa, MD Hlengwa. Other honorable members, I have to invite additional speakers. You are not speakers right now. Please. And we will listen to you only when you are sitting here, when you are standing in front of me here, not from your benches there. You are out of order. Honorable MD Hlengwa, talk to us. Are you ready? Chief Whip Nsando Gusho Manji. Please unmute. Sifuna ukuzwa ukuthi uthini, madam. Please unmute. Ayikalungi awizame futhi. Yahlupha le technology. Not yet, not yet. Please try again. I'm going to suggest that we skip you. We'll come back to you. Let's proceed with Honorable Vessels, who's also on virtual. We'll come back to you, Honorable Member MD Hlengwa.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, as other members have pointed out, a large bulk of these expenditure that is appropriated in this Special Adjustment Appropriation Bill was and is avoidable, especially the expenditure that is appropriated because of the damages and losses occurred due to the July unrests. Those unrests and the losses that occurred there and the damages that occurred there could have been restricted and even prevented if government acted, if government utilized criminal intelligence, and if government acted precautionary and in terms of that intelligence and acted to prevent the losses there. But they did not. It could have also been prevented and avoided and restricted if the ruling party and its factions did not also contribute to these unrests. And thus, 6.15 billion rand could have been spent on actually getting the economy going, on infrastructure development, and on expenditure that could have actually stimulated economic growth. Deputy Speaker, social relief of distress is unsustainable. We cannot get the poor out of poverty by only providing grants. We need economic growth and we need job creation above all else. The Honourable Buthelezi is correct that we need to address social economic disparities. But that can only be done by growing the economy, not by redistributing the economy, nor by grants. To grow the economy, we need infrastructure development, we need infrastructure maintenance, we need service delivery, we need policy certainty, and we need reforms which will stimulate investment and lead to job creation. Money is still being wasted on luxuries. Money is still being stolen by ANC cadres whilst the poor is getting poorer. We need new ideology, we need a responsible government, and thus we reject this appropriation bill.
Thank you. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, this bill provides 32.85 billion in public funds as a fiscal relief package as a result of the pandemic and the unrest in July. And it must be seen against last week's medium-term budget policy statement, during which the Finance Minister indicated that tax collection has been revised upwards by 120 billion rand, due mainly to the commodity boom. While much of this additional funding will go towards much-needed fiscal consolidation, funds will also be allocated to pay for the relief package from this increased revenue. Now, the ACDP, like many others, has asked many questions, both about government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, with one of the world's longest and hardest lockdowns, which has devastated businesses and employment and caused widespread social and economic distress, as well as the July riots, which were clearly politically motivated and where state intelligence services and initial responses proved woefully inadequate. Section 16 of the Public Finance Management Act allows for the use of funds only in emergencies, and this is what we are dealing with today, but it needs to be borne in mind that some of these funds are already being spent, despite the fact that Parliament has yet to allocate this appropriation bill. But let us look at some of the provisions. The 3.9 billion for SASRIA is allocated to assist businesses, to compensate businesses, and this will be a fraction of what is actually needed for businesses to recover following the July unrest. The second item of the 26.7 billion for the extension of the social relief of distress grant to the end of March, April next year is indeed welcome and supported, but it is a plaster on a deep wound that is not easily healed. Government is mandated correctly with social responsiveness. The ever-increasing welfare system, although to be supported and necessary in the short term, not only entrenches dependency, but is unsustainable in the long term. Clearly, we need economic growth. Government needs to provide the environment for entrepreneurs and businesses to grow their businesses and to create jobs. The third item relates to the deployment of military personnel and the 700 million rand expended where the SANDF supported the police during the July unrest. Now, the SANDF are to be commended for the role they played in stabilizing the country in July. Despite significant underfunding, these additional resources will go some way to alleviate their situation. In conclusion, the ACDP supports the sentiments of the committee that there must be regular reports to the committee and, of course, real-time audits of these funds where possible. It is our responsibility as servant leaders to ensure that no more public funds get siphoned off. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Good timing. Is the ATM present?
EUDM ikhona, Chair.
Ndithe ATM angakabuzi wena baba.
Bazemva kwami njena. Okay, thank you.
Ayikho ATM. UDM.
Sikhona.
Okay, please, man,
Deputy.
you help us when you tell us in advance. Yeah, go ahead.
Deputy Speaker, asiyixhasi thina siyi-United Democratic Movement le bill. Ngesizathu sinye, kuqala le nto sizothetha apha lonobenane ziingxaki zikakhongolose abohlulwe kumaneja iimfazwe zabo ngaphakathi politically. Zazezo mfazwe zabangela ungquzulwano nengxabano kwiphondo laseRhawutini nelaseKwaZulu-Natal. Okwesibini, into esasiyithethe kwakudala kwasekomitini ukuba asiyiboni kakuhle le nto le mdlalo wenu kapuca wokuba nithi seniyibekile imali nizayifaka ku-SASRIA to bail out businesses that were affected by the unrest. But urhulumente angabeki any conditions to those businesses, ibe ngu-free for all. As businesses, ingxaki yazo, most of them, as the employer South Africans, the employer foreign nationals that are undocumented here. Sibe singati for purposes of exploitation. If uzawuba ne-mall, apho kuzawusebenza khona abantu abangengabalapha kungazoxhamla abantu abafaka imali abathenga izinto kuyo. Abantu are not going to associate with ezo facilities. Namani nisithi abantu ba-destroy communities zabo. Abazungazi-destroy xa ii-malls zizaba zezabelungu nabantu abamhlophe noosomashishini zi-exclude abantu abamnyama. Ibifanele ukuthi xa kunikwa imali koosomashishini kube kwi-conditions, because you have socio-economic objectives as government that you need to meet. And the businesses need to align themselves with the socio-economic objectives and the challenges of the country in order for you nikwazi ukuthi nibanike imali. Akwazi unika imali ye-taxpayers nje. Uba bafuna ungabikho conditions mabakhangele ezinye insurance zabo. Nalo SASRIA kakade yacreatwa ngurhulumente we-apartheid beze kukhusela against i-violence eyayiqhubeka kuba silwela le nkululeko. Asikamfaki lo SASRIA kubantu abamnyama silindela babe nayo kodwa bamazi. Bazawumazi njani kodwa into yabelungu zasibafake kuyo. Simane sithatha imali eninzi siyobhela out abebene-SASRIA. Bebezamthatha apha abantu abamnyama bengamazi singakhe sibaxelele. Singakhange simguqule futhi sitshintshe siqiniseke ukuthi uyangena kubantu nabanamashishini nabanamashishini abancinci. Zezo ngxaki ke ezisithi khona asingeke sikwazi uyixhasa le bill kuba i-ANC government has missed an important and a critical opportunity to press the reset button on the South African economy, especially in the affected regions, and also try to create a model that you could replicate to the rest of the country. For as long as ingenzeki loo nto, asikwazi ukuba nizawuhlala nityebisa abatyebile. Abantu bakuthi nabane nibaqhatha nge-350 rands ngentloko. Elo xesha oosomashishini per capita, they get millions of rands in the form of bailouts. Niphinde nithi you are redressing inequality. Bebeqhathwa nje abantu bakuthi ukuze bakwazi uvotela i-ANC ngale 350 rands. Siyabulela.
Honorable Mabiletsa.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, the African National Congress supports the 2021 Special Appropriation Bill. Since the dawn of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government, the African National Congress, has implemented strategic interventions to assist millions of South Africans to alleviate the storm brought about the pandemic. This was the massive 500 billion package to accelerate our economic recovery, implement economic reforms to create sustainable jobs, drive inclusion growth, fight corruption, and strengthen the capacity of the state to navigate out of the economic and social impact of the pandemic and beyond. South Africa's challenges are unique and systemic, fraught with a history of inclusion and oppression against the majority. We, as a result, remain a highly unequal society with high levels of poverty and unemployment. From time to time, many populist demagogues seek to take advantage of the distress faced by our people for their own selfish political gains, promising them shortcuts and quick fixes. The ANC government will never allow our people to be used as tools for political expediency and selfish gain. The COVID-19 pandemic is an unprecedented event, and it has destroyed many lives and families across the globe. It has prompted many first world neoliberal countries to introduce fiscal stimulus packages to keep their economies afloat and reduce job losses and poverty. The second special appropriation bill aims to address the impact of the recent unrest of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Our society is highly fragile due to the worsening quality of life and suffering related to structural unemployment and extraordinary levels of inequality. Women, Black women in particular, and youth are the most vulnerable and have borne the worst impact. The ANC government proactively institutionalized COVID-19 responsive measures that are targeted at protecting our society and economy. These responses are instrumental in cautioning South Africans against the adverse impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and saving lives as their means of livelihood. The appropriation of 26.7 billion for the Department of Social Development of the overall 32.85 billion to cater for the social relief distress grant of 350 rand until the end of March 2022 must be applauded. It is a progressive move that has provided assistance to about 9.5 million people who are in distress as a result of the pandemic and the July unrest, with women and the youth as the biggest beneficiaries thereof. We know that 62% of the beneficiaries are youth. The pandemic came to our shores during the period when we were grappling with high levels of food insecurity, which increased from 4.3% when the lockdown started to 7%, thus raising the number of people who were food 7 million. In the face of a global pandemic, which brought much distress to millions of South Africans, our country suffered yet another setback in July, which made worse the living conditions of the people in KZN and parts of Gauteng. These are two important economic hubs that contribute 50% towards our GDP. The appropriated funds are essential to resort the economic and social situation in these provinces to normality. The Department of Social Development and its entities play a pivotal role in providing social assistance and cautioning vulnerable groups against the impact of structural unemployment, poverty, and other forms of social distress in our country. The appropriated funds will continue on this strategy through the ongoing presidential employment stimulus, which entails the allocation of an additional 30 million for the employment stimulus, which 30 million for the National Development Agency's volunteer program to assist communities in distress. The program has created 2,000 job opportunities for the youth, 70% being women. The volunteers has been instrumental in supporting the department's community program in areas such as the distribution of food and nutrition packages to vulnerable households through the community nutrition and development centers, which provided relief to 3 million beneficiaries across the country, and the dissemination of COVID-19 information in local languages to build community awareness and data collection on poverty status. A further 120 million grant has been allocated for early childhood development services. We are mindful of the technical glitches experienced by the Department of Social Development in the application of and payment processes of the SRD grant. The intervention by government through the allocation of 500 million to improve these systems, as well as the eligibility assessment system, is welcomed, as they will ensure the efficient administration of these grants through modernization, preventing corruption, and ensuring that all payments are electronic. This will be instrumental in limiting and dignity of standing in the long queues at our post offices. In conclusion, I would like to say and overemphasize that the ANC has changed the lives of many South Africans since it took political power in 1994 and continues to work hard to transform the lives of our people and will not stop or waver in its resolve to improve the lives of our people. The pandemic has taught us the importance of forward planning, measures to mitigate the risks of new pandemics in the future and impact of climate change have to be included and in budget planning so that enough resilience is built within society and promote economic stability. There are 27.8 South Africans who receive social assistance from government, which mitigates against the impact of the economic challenges and banishing hunger. The need for a comprehensive social security safety net is
your
aided
time has
and
expired.
ensure inclusion and greater resilience in our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable August.
Deputy Speaker, over the past 2 years, the COVID pandemic struck us as just about our weakest point, with the economy already depressed by the ratings agency and on its knees. Millions more jobs lost, millions of parents struggling to feed their families. The only thing showing any signs of growth is the poverty gap. When South Africa's economy was growing in the late 90s and 2000s, government squandered the opportunity to use the money wisely to narrow the gap between privilege and poverty and to ensure that no South African should live in the mud without dignity or go to bed with without food in their stomachs. The confirmation from the Minister of Social Development that her department will be issuing a discussion document on the proposed basic income grant is welcoming. But decades delayed, steps in ensuring support for the vulnerable South Africans. While we welcome this move as an immediate interim step, good appeals for the temporary COVID-19 grant to be made permanent until such time as the BIG can be formally launched. Good has campaigned constantly for a basic income grant to be implemented in South Africa. It is in this context of crisis that we meet to debate the medium-term budget policy statement today. Deputy Speaker, Patricia de Lille, the leader of Good, said that a basic income grant is necessary to alleviate the social and economic trauma of rampant unemployment and inhumane hunger. Good believes that a government committed to eliminating rampant theft and corruption is capable of making the savings needed to implement the basic income grant. Bringing the money back into the budget that has been lost to corruption would be a huge source of income. Until such time as the BIG can be rolled out, Good reiterates its appeal for the temporary COVID-19 support grant to be made permanent. A few months ago, Good was one of just a handful of political parties to support the allocation of an additional 2.8 billion to social development. The DA, EFF, IFP, Freedom From Plus, ACDP voted against allocating 2.8 billion for grants, whilst the UDM, ATM, AIC, PAC, and COPE were absent from this vote altogether. Let's prioritize the BIG grant, which can mean the difference between continued poverty and a shot at a better life for too many South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now call on Sheikh Imam. After him, I would like to request you, Honorable MD, ready. Go ahead, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and welcome back from your escapade, if that's what I should call it, but thank you very much for the opportunity. Deputy Speaker, the second special appropriation bill has been necessitated as a result of the challenges that we have in the country created by ourselves. First of all, the protest and looting that took place, and remember we have two types of looting, the protest and looting that took place in July, and for that reason, we had to create this bill so that we could provide relief to the very vulnerable and poor in our society. That emanates from the fact that we have not been able to deal with socio-economic transformation 28 years into democracy. Now, I'm not sure why some members feel we can actually brag about saying we provide assistance, social assistance to 27.8 million people in South Africa. Actually, it's not a success, it's a failure. If 27.8% or almost, of our people have to rely on social assistance just to survive. We are forgetting that 44% of the people in this country are unemployed. Almost 1 in 2 persons in this country is unemployed. Now, let me talk about this 350 Rand social grant that we are giving to the people. We welcome it. However, that 350 Rand, if you actually break it down, with the exorbitant price increases that big business in South Africa have put in the last year and 2 years, means that 350 Rand is actually reduced to about 130, 140 Rand. Then if you take the effort that these people have to make to go and sleep sometime for 3 and 4 days outside the post office to get this assistance, the social grant, then what are they actually getting? It's costing them money to go and actually pick it up. But all this is as a result of us failing to provide a conducive environment to deal with the socio-economic conditions under which our people live in this country. We have never created an environment where we can create enough jobs in this country. And the unemployment rate is increasing year in and year out. And it can only get progressively worse. I think it is time for us to look at even our policies that we have in place, because they're not adequate. It's not causing economic growth in South Africa. And I can assure you, it is not sustainable, Deputy Speaker, to continuously increase the number of people in the country on social assistance. Then the problem we've had is with the social unrest, which up to date today, we don't know what is actually happening.
Honorable Sheikh, your time has expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Honorable MD Tlengwa, please connect and unmute. Please, and where is the chief whip who is supposed to take over from him of the IFP, ma'am? Are you able to unmute?
Yes.
Please go ahead, ma'am. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yebo.
Now, and I am. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Today's task on the consolidation report on the Standing Committee of Appropriate on recover from effect of the pandemic, load shedding, unemployment, and vaccine delays. The economic challenge we face as a nation are multi-layers, and given the systematic nature of unemployment, the IFP is committed to continuing fight poverty, inequality, and unemployment in country. We are the last financial quarter 2021, and it is sad to reflect on the high employment rates in our country. It is our hope that today's deliberation will cushion part of this harsh realities. The IFP is deeply concerned with the administrative glitches and experience with some SASSA offices, which makes it hard to some beneficiaries to access their grants. We support the needs of efficient administration system that will improve the grants application, appeals, and payment processes. Therefore, we are supporting funding allocation to SASSA for system enhancement, improve to application and payment of processes, while could open new avenues for corruption with SASSA. We condemn such acts, and it is our hope that this experience before we not occur. The IFP also acknowledged that the social relief distress SRG grant is short period of time has reached millions, but we are concerned that millions of South Africa are applying for these relief grants, highlighting the extent of which unemployment continues to ravage our economy. Our worry is also with the value of grant, which remains below the poverty line, making it less effective in fighting the poverty. Abantu bakithi bathi baba ne-stress besazi nje ukuthi bayohola ngoba ayikho kwamali abayiholayo. Besingacela ukuthi njengo-IFP mhlawumbe le mali ibe ngconywana kunalokhu ngoba umuntu ufike seney'kwenetu ey'ningi esenakho konke engasazi ukuthi uzokwenze njani. The IFP support the proposal in the 2021 second special appropriate bill to provide appropriation fund allocation for the 2021-2022 financial year to votes of national trade, social development, defense policy, and trade industry and competition. We also support the support of proposal for additional expenditure authorized by the Minister of Finance to extend the social relief of distress grant and support for small business. I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the AIC present? The PAC?
It is present, but not talking.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Al-Jamaa. Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Al-Jamaa is very excited that the principle of zero-based budgeting is going to be taken further by the new Minister of Finance. And we support that because there's too much fat in most of our budgets With regard to the social welfare grants, in the State of the Nation address, the President said that every South African will get a warm plate of food every day. And we imagine that the social grants is a step in that direction. Al-Jamaa is not in favor of eliminating the social welfare grants for the millions of people that need it, unless they are given employment. Even if they have to work for a day, they have to be in a position to earn what they've lost or more. Also, Al-Jamaa has the position. We also would like to congratulate the Minister of Finance for his bold step that he will consult with political party leaders in the second week of December to engage with regard to the fiscal policy of the country. This is the first time in our 6 parliaments that such a bold step has been taken, and we look forward to engaging the Minister of Finance to help establish a
Honorable Hanif Hendrikse, we can't hear you. Unfortunately, the reception is pretty bad. Honorable members, there's only one clock and one member who speaks on time. None of you do. Honorable Hanif, it appears your reception where you are is pretty bad. You are being cut off now. This is why members want to take over from you.
Deputy Speaker,
Honorable Gungubela, my dear Minister, please switch off your microphone. It will help the House. Honorable Hanif, ons kan niks hoor van wat jy is. We are going to... It's not working, sir. Honorable Hanif, we are going to skip you now, and because your reception is not improving at all, we can't hear you. I'm afraid
it's like the outcome of the elections.
Now, manje ungena phi wena? Honorable order, please, honorable members. Honorable Hanif, I'm afraid we are now going to skip you because your reception where you are is not improving at all. We apologize that we have to take this step. Now we have to anyway. Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker, ministers and deputy ministers, members of the public. Order riot and civil unrest across KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng
My apologies to you. Honorable members, please, all of you, just switch off. Just look at your mic there. Make sure it's off because we realize that it may not be your intention to do so. But please just look around your gadget and switch off so that it doesn't disrupt speakers here. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
We apologize, Speaker.
The July events of public disorder, riots and civil unrest across KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, damage and destruction of property. This happened amidst our country being on a recovery trajectory from the global economic crisis as a result of COVID-19, which has posed a great threat to the lives and health of our people, to the recovery and transformation of our economy. The July unrest not only led to the destruction of infrastructure and business, but it has threatened the livelihood of poor South Africans in KZN and Gauteng. Many businesses were damaged and looted, resulted in huge costs to the economy. The second special appropriation bill, you must listen now, TA. The second special appropriation bill aims to address the impact of the recent unrest and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. These are the important interventions by our government. These interventions are indicative of a government that is responsive and determined to do whatever it takes to deal with the economic impact of COVID-19 and the impact of the July unrest. So the ANC did not cause any violence in KZN. I think it was important that you know that over the past 300 years, apartheid colonial rule was responsible for violence against blacks and Africans in particular, not the ANC. And responsibility for that. And so many apartheid murderers are still loitering the streets that you can blame the ANC for violence in KwaZulu-Natal, and they should go to jail. The appropriation of 309 billion rand from the National Revenue Refund to the South African Special Risk Insurance Association was then allocated to assist in increasing its solvency cover ratio and enable SASRIA to cover all legitimate claims relating to the destruction of property in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. It is important to indicate that SASRIA, as the only state-owned insurance company established to provide cover for the damage caused by the special risks such as politically motivated malicious acts, riots, strikes, terrorism, and public disorder, has done exceptionally well since time immemorial, and it is not dependent on bailers from the government. It is well run and boosted a profit of 333 million rand during the 2021 financial year. It plays a pivotal role in providing insurance service to private companies, municipalities, state-owned companies, tertiary education, and SMMEs. So the fact of the matter is that the private sector, it is not in a position to fund the gaps in key infrastructural areas. So the ANC cannot fold its hands and watch when things go wrong. So that is why it is acting, and would contextually not have been able to respond to provide relief or cover for any damage to property as a result of unforeseen events such as the current pandemic and July unrest. So the role of government in the economy, it is therefore paramount important in any developing economy. And if you refer to the medium-term budget policy statement, you would understand the focus areas that is aimed at improving on the economy and how that is going to unfold when the minister announced further measures in February budget around the infrastructure, the Freedom Front. The role of government in the economy is therefore of paramount importance. That is why a 309 billion has been appropriated for the sustainability and recapitalization of Sasria. Our National Defense Force is mandated not only to protect our country's sovereignty and from external threats, but also to deepen our democracy by providing sufficient security to the nation. So that is why the ANC welcomes the additional 700 million and 250 million rand respectively for both SANDF and SACP, so that they are able to do their job properly to advance, to protect the citizens. And let me come to you, DA. The ANC's policy are forthright in ensuring that the people's lives are being advanced. And there's nothing wrong about the ANC policy. In fact, they are the best policy that one can ever come across as a ruling political party. Your problem is that you do not understand that you are groomed in a very deep-rooted apartheid colonial economy. That is why you do not understand what is poverty. That is why you are able to stand here and pretend that you are able to do good. You do not understand what poverty is because you have never been subjected to any poverty. So the ANC is doing its best. You must go and ask your friends in the mass mart, in the retail sector, what they are doing. They are slaughtering. They are preparing to ambush the work.
Go to the municipality of Taung.
Bloodbath, job losses in the retail sector, the mass mart. They are preparing to do that. So you must ask your friend. So we want to appreciate the EFF for supporting the 350 grant.
Honorable Kaiso, ongelukkig is het tijd is nou oor.
So thank you very much. Support this budget.
Honorable the Deputy Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think the purpose of this second special appropriation bill has been well articulated by honorable members to this parliament, which is to request parliament to consider the measures announced by the President of the Republic to support the economic recovery and provide relief to the poor in the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and also in the wake of the recent unrest. Honorable Chair, I think when such events like this unrest have happened, I think it is a moment that as a country we need to reflect and ask hard questions, as opposed to focusing on narrow political point scoring. I mean, such question for me, what make this social unrest possible? And not inevitable, because like if you've got dry grass, it's not inevitable that you'll have fire. And the second question that we really need to ask as a nation, it's what makes such unrest probable? And it will seem that the probability of this unrest has also to do with the state capacity. So it is probable to have such unrest when the state capacity is weakened, but also when the civil society is weak. But we've also seen in this unrest how the people of South Africa stood up and defended South Africa against violence and unrest. And the third question, which is a very narrow question, is about the triggers. The fact that there's dry grass does not mean, as I said, there will be fire automatically. You've got to have someone who ignite fire and cause that grass to burn. So focusing on triggers is very narrow because there could be other triggers that are coming our way as a nation. As long as we do not address economic growth and redistribution. And I hear Honorable Vessel say that we must only talk about economic growth, not redistribution. I beg to differ. I think we need to talk simultaneously about or tackle both economic growth and redistribution, because you can have economic growth, which is racially, gender exclusive, excluding Black people, poor people, women, youth. It can be destructive to the environment. So economic growth in itself, it's not enough. Hence, as government, we talk about inclusive growth. Otherwise, exclusive growth set the necessary conditions for this unrest. It makes it possible for this unrest to happen. Therefore, we have to talk seriously about economic growth and redistribution, and this is possible. I mean, just to give you an example, Honorable Vessels, if you redistribute land to both white and Black farmers, and they use it to produce food, it means that South Africans will have food. It also means that there will be demand for inputs for agriculture, chemicals, and other industrial inputs. And in that way, there's a nice articulation between agriculture and industry. And I will really persuade you and fellow South Africans that we cannot talk about economic growth and forget about redistribution unless those who want us to talk about economic growth only, they are comfortable with the economy that grows for the few and exclude the majority of South Africans. And if we do so, we do it at our peril because we're setting the condition for this unrest. Honorable Chair, the government has also provided, because we do understand that we need sustainable growth in order to deal with many problems, crime, unemployment, as well as the financial or fiscal imbalances in our fiscal framework. That we need to grow our economy. It is for this reason that in the 2021-22 budget, our government has allocated 207 billion to support economic growth, which range from industrialization, agriculture, innovation, and technology. In order to have peace and security and stability in our country, in order to lessen the probability of this unrest, we've provided for 1 billion for security cluster to maintain peace, which is a necessary condition for inclusive growth. And of course, Honorable Chair, there are other measures which are fiscal neutral, which we're undertaking. In other words, these measures, they don't need any budget. They just need us to reform certain aspects of our economy. That is why we've got Operation Vulindlela, which is focusing on the supply side of the economy in order to provide electricity by increasing the threshold for self-generation of the electricity. We don't spend money in that regard. The visa regulation enable us to attract more tourists. In fact, some of these structural reforms, they immediately generate revenue for the state, such as the allocation of the spectrum. So lastly, Honorable Speaker, we really like to persuade the House and also some of the honorable members who have a different view to what we've presented, to really persuade them to approve this second Special Appropriation Bill, whilst we are simultaneously dealing with economic growth and redistribution in our country. Thank you.
Honorable members, are there any objections to the bill being read a first time? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Second Special Appropriation Bill.
Honorable members, the Secretary will read the third order.
Second reading, Second Special Appropriation Bill.
Honorable members, as there is no list of speakers, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Second Special Appropriation Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the fourth order. Go ahead, Honourable Member.
Decision of question on second reading Employment Equity Amendment Bill.
Honourable members, I wish to remind you, if any of you forgot, that on Thursday, 9 September 2021, the decision of the question on the Employment Equity Amendment Bill was postponed. Are there any objections to the Employment Equity Amendment Bill being read a second time?
Please note the objection of the DA, Deputy Speaker.
We will
call for division.
Honourable members, a division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
I want to suggest that we do away with the division because the caller of the division doesn't know the rules. There were supposed to be 4 in the House. He's alone. Thank you.
Order. Let's establish whether there are any additional members from the DA. Honorable Julius, we want you to confirm that there are people on the virtual platform. Julius? Honorable Julius? I'm asking you, listen to me, stop reading. I want to know whether there are people on the virtual platform with you. If they are not, we can also establish that, that there are indeed, we need to establish that. I can't hear you.
Deputy Speaker, I'm not on that platform.
I know that. I know that. But the processes we're going to undertake requires of you to confirm.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm trying to confirm now. You say stop reading and answer.
Honorable members, the rules are clear. The doors are closed. Nobody can go on to the virtual platform who was not there already. So that one is closed, please. Don't worry about it. You can't do it sitting there where you are. No. Order, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip. They can also take care of it. As a belief, bladed still. The real, yeah. Honorable Member, if you are not able to confirm this, I'm afraid we are going to have to call this off. No, wait. Can you just get people to establish that? So, yeah, on video. Yeah, they're bringing it. Okay, yeah. Honorable members, it's both his job and our job to confirm that. It can't only be one part that confirms it. So before you rush with judgment, hold on to it just a little while.
There are 28 DA members on the platform.
Okay, all right. No, honorable members, we are okay. We are proceeding with the requirements. There are enough members on the virtual platform for us to proceed. The Speaker has determined that in accordance with the rules, a manual voting procedure will be used for this division. Firstly, in order to establish a quorum, we would request the table to confirm that we have the requisite number of members physically present in the chamber and on the virtual platform to take this decision. Party whips will then be given an opportunity to confirm the number of their members present and indicate if they vote for or against the question. A member who wishes to abstain or vote against the party vote may do so by informing the chair. Having confirmed that we have the requisite quorum, we will now proceed. The question before the House is that I'll just let me see. I wanted to read it out in full. That the bill be read a second time. Voting will now commence. As I said earlier, the doors to the chamber were closed immediately the 5 minutes was over. And that having been done, including these doors physically closed and on the virtual platform, whips, Please give us and confirm the number of your members present in the chamber and on the virtual platform.
What the fuck is the Koek Bellu terug?
Okay, August, okay. We want you to confirm if members present of your party, both in the chamber and in the on the virtual platform, are voting for or against the question. The table here will assist in the process. Now I'm going to call the list of party whips, starting with the ANC. Tell us, yes, Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, and the ANC, on the virtual platform, we have 187 members. In the physical attendance here in this chamber, the ANC has 70 members, totaling up to 257 voting for this bill. Thank you. Sonke slapha, sonke.
Honorable members of the ANC, is there anybody who wants to vote differently? Honorable members, if the Chief Whip represented you, that's fine. You can't answer anymore. Now the screaming you are doing is out of order. Assembly. These are your rules and you accepted them. So don't violate them by practice here. Mononi tel kere gaan en soveel skree asseblief. The DA.
Deputy Chief Whip, one in the House.
That's it.
Sorry.
The Deputy Chief Whip is there. Yeah.
Deputy Speaker, my apologies. One in the House and 4 on virtual. Voting against.
Say that again, please. Say the numbers. Just take off your mask, just briefly.
1 in the House and 4 on virtual.
When I was a drunkard.
Okay. All right. Okay. Honorable TB, on the virtual platform, this is the 3rd time you do this. Please don't do that. The rules are explicitly clear that you shouldn't interrupt proceedings in the House in the way in which you've just done. Please don't do it. Okay, let's go to the EFF.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. We are 8 in the House, 19 on the visual platform, and Siavum. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's nothing to do with the collision. Nothing at all.
Order. Okay. Is there... So in the EFF, there's no one who we want to know who wants to vote differently? Okay. IFP.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. There's 4 of us on the virtual, and we are voting yes.
We're voting yes. Okay. Okay, that's clear. There are 4 of them. FF plus. FF plus. Still to Andy Hayes. ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As far as we can establish, 1 on virtual, 1 in the House voting against. Thank you.
All right. UDM.
Speaker, Deputy Speaker.
No.
Deputy Speaker.
Who's that? Who's speaking now?
Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
Can I be recognized?
Who's that?
Here I am. I'm standing. Deputy Speaker, I'm waving.
Yeah. What can I know? I'll come back to you, Chief Whip. I'll come back to you. Yes. Honorable members of the DA, kan julle teruggaan asseblief van waar julle kom. You are not allowed to come back. The voting process is underway. Honorable members, they're getting in. No, honorable member, dancing. Go out, please, and do it swiftly. Order, honorable members, order. Order, honorable members. No. Honorable members, alsjeblieft, no. You can, honorable members, don't be provoked by other members here. There's a voting process underway. You are disrupting the House. Honorable member there at the back there, you are literally out of order. I don't understand why you do that. How do you disrespect the House, even when we respect you? You're out of order. And there's nothing you are standing on there, as you say that. Nothing. There's no question about it. Honorable Chief Whip, assembly. So literally will name you and throw you out of the House, even in the middle of a vote.
Honorable members of the ANC, stop Delela. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I rise on an order where we were given slight higher numbers in terms of the virtual platform. Yes. I'm standing here to give the correct figures.
Go ahead.
The ANC on the virtual platform is 150 because some people are disconnected by the network, and the in physical attendance is 70, and that takes us to 220. Thank you.
Thank you very much. UDM. Okay, UDM is not there. ATM. ATM is not there. Good.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. One on virtual, and the minister was kicked out, so she's struggling to get in. I don't know if I should then say two, because she's struggling to get back. But one on virtual and in support.
Yeah, Honorable August, nobody was kicked out. You have to provide evidence of your statement, because you are only prevented from coming in if you are not there in the first place. That's preventing people from coming in during a voting process. This is why we also ask members of the DA who wanted to come in to go out. That's exactly what happened, sir. Don't make allegations that are unfounded. NFP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Two on the virtual platform in support.
AIC. COPE. PAC. Al-Jama. Khanif, are you connected?
I don't know what to do, you know. What a problem, you know.
No. Honorable Sheikh Imam, your time is gone. Stop talking now and switch off your mic. Honorable members, is there any member that wishes to abstain or vote differently to their party? I want to repeat that. There's no indication. Yeah, thank you. The voting session is now closed. We're now waiting for the results to be announced before anybody connects virtually or walks in here. They must wait until the results are announced. Honorable members, there are no abstentions. There are 16 noes and 254 ayes. Yes, in other words. Yeah. The question is accordingly agreed to, and the Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Second Special Appropriation Bill.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Just let me finish my job first. Just
All
hold
right,
on. Just hold on.
Sure.
I made a mistake. I must read the employment equity bill.
No, I'm tracing it. I'm going to give you the opportunity. Wait. I'll show you where it is. Yes. It continues here. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Employment Equity Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Deputy Speaker.
Wait. Honorable Tangwini wanted to speak.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. No, I wanted to remind Honorable Julius he can now call his members in.
Honorable Tangwini, we don't know whether Honorable Julius will take your advice. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development on Sectional Titles Amendment Bill.
The Chief Whip.
Enkosi Sekela Somlomo. Sekela Somlomo ndiphakamisa into yoba le ndlu yoqingqo nowisomthetho mayize iyamkele le ngxelo izawubekwa apha. Enkosi.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the sixth order.
Second reading debate, Sectional Titles Amendment Bill.
Now, there's a list here. Let me just... Wait. Let me just see. The Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Togo Didis. Please sort out and that one there, please. Honorable Minister, please just hold on so that the time is read appropriately from the beginning. Just keep watching the red section. Just keep watching there. You'll know when you're ready. Go ahead, Honorable Minister.
The time they need to give me my 2 minutes.
No,
Deputy Speaker.
You'll get your time.
Ministers and Deputy Ministers present in the House and on the platform. Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Members of the Portfolio Committee, esteemed members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It was argued that the introduction of the Sectional Titles Act in 1971 revolutionized the South African property market. And that was correct. It radically changed the way and manner in which people understood and applied property ownership, whether residential, business, or industrial in South Africa. However, the introduction of this act happened at the time when South Africa experienced apartheid, where segregation was mandated by law. Black people were barred from living in the so-called white areas but had to live in townships and rural areas. Very little housing was built for Africans under apartheid, and therefore ownership, secure tenure rights, and participation in the property market was limited, if not non-existent. And it is this reason that we continue to work towards return of land for those who were excluded before, who are the black people and Africans in particular. The Sectional Titles Act of 1971 was then replaced by the Sectional Titles Act of 1986. And the purpose of this Sectional Titles Act, which we're also amending today, is to make possible to register ownership to different parts of buildings to different persons by the registrar. What this actually means is that in a building, you can have various owners, like in a flat of the block of flats rather, where you can own a flat even if others are renting, and that flat can actually be directly registered in your name. This was actually a deviation from the Roman Dutch law principle that owner of a piece of land is also the owner of the building situated on such land without it being separable. The Sectional Titles Act makes it possible for different owners to also access credit by the registration of sectional mortgage bonds of the parts in respect to which they are registered owner. Labo ke abangomastandi bemihlaba kumbe abangomastandi abarentisa ngama-room okanye ama-flat, kusho ukuthi ke uma umnikazi we-flat efuna ukulithenga angakwazi ukuthi alibhalise ngegama lakhe ngale kwebhilidi kumbe kwegama lomnini bhilidi. Kusho lokho ke ukuthi sectional, ukuthi ungakhipha ingxenye yokuthize ebhilidini ukubhalise ngawe, ukwazi nokuthola i-mortgage for i-block kumbe i-flat lakho ngale kokuthi ibhilidi lilonke kube yilona eliyokufunela isikweletu. Lastly, the Sectional Titles Act makes provision where possible for the extension of a development scheme by the addition of a further building or buildings. The Sectional Titles Act is therefore important for the extension of the development scheme by the addition of a further building or buildings. The objectives of the bill as we're amending today is to provide for improved registration and surveying systems. It's also for effective and efficient land administration and land management. It also simplifies the process of cancellation of mortgage and for exclusive use of area in circumstances where land in a development scheme is alienated such that it ceases to be part of a development scheme. It also strengthens the rights of lessees in the development scheme and sustainable land development. Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, without getting into the detail of the contents of the bill further seeks to amend and clarify a number of definitions that make the interpretation relating to this act sometimes cumbersome. It further provides for the developer to answer questions put to the developer by the agents of the lessees. This is a critical input towards holding developers accountable and to have a transparent process. The bill also seeks to clarify concerns that have been raised on exclusive use area within Sectional Titles Act. It also provides for the amendment and cancellation of a sectional plan upon an order of the court. Chairperson, I would like to thank the chair of the committee as well as members of the portfolio committee for having worked with us in ensuring that this bill is tabled in this house today. And I would like therefore to commend this bill for members to approve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Mandela.
Tsotsolola. Honorable Deputy Speaker, respected colleagues, respected members of the media, we are pleased to participate in the second reading of the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill and thank the Honorable Minister Umamutitiza, her team, and all who have participated in the public hearings. Their records are reflected in the public participation process. Your inputs provided us with valuable insights and gave us a good understanding and appreciation of issues of concern and possible solutions. 27 years into our democracy, we take serious note of the importance of public participation process in legislative making. When sectional titles was first conceived in 1971, Black people were racially excluded and economically marginalized, with no participation in the legislative making process. The South African Constitution addresses both the issue of land ownership and tenure as key restorative acts in addressing the evils of our past. The former is deeply embedded in our psyche as the original sin of colonial occupation, and the latter is a highly emotive and difficult phenomenon to traverse as it is tied to our very existence and dignity. For a large part of our population, tenure is also tied to our transition from slavery to being free men entitled to own or negotiate title. Post-1994, there was an added challenge of perpetual poverty, especially in rural communities where, despite legislative changes, prevailing economic conditions prevented the exercise of the right of land ownership. Security of tenure was tenuous and often at the mercy of untransformed, conservative farmers hell-bent on retaining their position of privilege. The Sectional Titles Amendment Bill before us today seeks to improve systems for the provision of secure tenure to sectional title holders. Under apartheid, racial and class segregation were mandated by law. Blacks could not live in white areas, but had to live in townships or in the impoverished rural Bantustans. Very little housing was built for Africans under the apartheid, thus resulting in massive housing backlogs. As a result, when the ANC came into power, there was only one formal brick house for every 43 Africans, compared to for every 3.5 whites. The urban housing backlog alone was at least 1.3 million units in 1994, and currently there are over 1.5 million unregistered households considered as informal. It was estimated that 66% of South Africa's population was functionally unbiased. The remaining 34% of the total population resided in rural areas, many of whom would spend part of their working lives in urban areas. To meet the growing population, it meant 130,000 households had to be built every year. In 1993, only about 50,000 houses were built. Between 7.5 and 10 million people lived in informal housing, such as shanties and squatted camps and backyards of black township houses. This continued right into the 1980s as part of the struggle against apartheid. Township residents organized rent services payment boycott. In the current dispensation, sectional titles schemes have become popular and constitute one of the fastest growing components of the property market sector, contributing significantly to our country's economy. It is estimated that approximately 58% of all households had secure tenure whereas an estimated 9% of households lived under traditional, informal or inferior and or officially unrecognized tenure arrangements in rural areas. An additional estimated 18% of all households were forced to live in squatter settlements, backyard shacks, or overcrowded conditions in existing formal housing in urban areas with no formal tenure rights over their accommodation. According to a recent general household survey issued by Stats South Africa, there are currently around 714,000 households living in flats or apartments and roughly a further 233,000 households living in township houses complexes, adding up to approximately 947,000 households living in sectional title schemes. The concept of shared living has grown in popularity, and many embrace the concept as a viable means of living, giving, and bordering problem of urban land space and secure living. Today, local municipalities are using vertical ownership of land in order to meet the crisis of land hunger. However, from our public participation process, it is apparent that sectional titles model may not be entirely appropriate or accessible for the poor for obvious reasons, one being the high cost of having to register a sectional title deed. We have therefore made request to the Honorable Minister, her team, to address the above matter in more comprehensive and inclusive manner in order to make provision for this consideration. And it is for this reason that the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development was granted permission to amend other provisions of the Sectional Titles Act. We therefore, honorable members, as the African National Congress, welcome the second reading of the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill and support its adoption. I thank you.
Sithokoze Ndabezitha Mhlonishwa Mbambama.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Honorable members, the committee requested permission from the National Assembly in terms of Rule 2864C to inquire into amending certain provisions of Sectional Titles Act number 95 of 1986 that were not included in the amendment bill. The National Assembly gave permission for that. The Sectional Titles Act, which is being amended, will now focus exclusively on the survey, establishment, and registration aspects of sectional title schemes post-2016. All management-related issues were removed and placed under the Sectional Title Schemes Amendment Act. The Western Cape Department of Human Settlements argued in its submissions that this bill proposes that a certificate in terms of Section 7 of the Principal Act be amended to include confirmation of compliance in terms of Section 26(2) of the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act of 2013, which is Act 16 of 2013, commonly known as SPLUMA. Section 26 of SPLUMA provides that land may be used only for the purposes permitted, A, by land use scheme, B, by town planning scheme, until such scheme is replaced by a land use scheme, or C, in terms of subsection 3. Western Cape Minister of Human Settlements, Tertius Simmers, goes on to argue that the municipal land use planning bylaws and zoning schemes bylaws provide for development compliance with zoning scheme requirements. Therefore, the proposed amendment is requesting that an architect or land surveyor certify that the sectional title scheme, use and buildings erected, represents a land use scheme in terms of use and development parameters. Municipal planning is a function of the local sphere of government. The Western Cape Human Settlements Minister raises valid practical concerns because it is contemplated that a private body or individual outside of a municipality must make certified statements in respect of compliance with the land use scheme. It's unclear what the legal effect of such certificates is intended to be, especially if issued in error, if the final determination rests with the municipality. The other concern is the regular access to all municipal files and data which may be required to issue such certificates. Truth be told, House Chair, the current bill is not the problem. South Africa has an ANC government problem. While Parliament was busy considering these technical registration changes, many developers and owners of these sectional titles were trying to come to terms with the destruction that was inflicted on their properties and investments in the July 2021 riots that took place in KZN and Gauteng. The ANC government willfully allowed acts of vandalism to take place, resulting in the destruction and burning down of some properties such as malls and retail shops that are governed under the Sectional Titles Act. To be clear, the amendment of this bill is not going to address a failing state and its associated problems, especially in respect of the rule of law. Furthermore, House Chair, these amendments were brought before the committee while the ANC-EFF alliance were hell-bent on changing the constitution to allow for expropriation of land, without compensation. House Chair, it puzzles me as to where the ANC government gets its mandate from, because it certainly does not get it from South Africans. Maybe it gets it from its communist friends in Venezuela, China, or Cuba. South Africans want the government to cultivate an environment conducive to job creation, not to destroy the economy, not to expropriate land without compensation. South Africans need the dignity of work. The DA-run city of Cape Town is the only municipality that is focused on implementing bylaws that protect investments and sectional title buildings. Based on our commitment to protect property rights and respect to the rule of law, the Democratic Alliance supports the bill. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Matthias.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. The right to a home is a fundamental human right which ought to be inalienable and secured by proper legislative mechanism. While sectional title schemes are deemed attractive by some because of the perception that they provide more security to residents, the reality, however, is that these schemes are now used by developers to scam people and make communal living impossible. Not so long ago, we read how the funders of President Ramaphosa, Balvin Properties, have been scamming sectional title holders at a debate, the so-called Lagoon residential area in Gauteng, through demanding unreasonable levy amounts from those lending out their property. The Balvin property scandal is not an isolated incident. Here in the Western Cape, the Propel Group has been conniving with city officials from municipalities such as the City of Cape Town to conjure up patently illegal sectional title schemes, such as the so-called Somerville Estate in Hagley. In this area, homeowners were duped into believing that they were buying homes in a security estate, only for the developers to remove security while trapping residents in an unending debt obligation. All these call for a stronger legislative regulation of the sectional title schemes. And this amendment to the Sectional Title Act is not even scratching the surface. Currently, there are 3 legislative mechanisms governing sectional title schemes: the Sectional Title Act, the Sectional Title Schemes Act, and the Community Schemes Ombudsman Service Act. All these are disjointed and need to be pulled together under one legislation to regulate the establishment of the sectional title schemes in a way that will protect the homeowners and not favor developers' insatiable desire for profit. House Chairperson, this Parliament should advocate for more of a social forms of property ownership under this legislation to have a paradigm shift away from the current capitalist-orientated sectional title system. What this Sectional Titles Act seems to call for is nothing else but to think around the Sectional Title Act 95 of 1986, which did not have as its target the majority of the poor people, mainly Black Africans, in mind. It did not have envisaged them owning properties and residing in the cities. The sectional titles approach works for the rich. It does not work for low-cost housing. With these amendments, there is no fundamental radical shift to foster conditions which enable access to land on an equitable basis. In terms of the Sectional Titles Act, as amended, the South African developer must first ensure that his proposed housing scheme complies with the planning law requirements pertaining to the land and buildings to be erected on the land. Secondly, he must prove that he has capital and demonstrate how to finance the development, and particularly in the case of large scheme. They must further acquire services of a land surveyor and architect to ensure that the proposed scheme complies with the relevant town planning schemes and building laws. We fully agree that housing schemes proposed by architects and land surveyors must comply with Section 26, subsection 2 of the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act of 2013. However, we reject the unregulated abuse of power by the body corporates who impose levies that a number of beneficiaries cannot afford due to the ever-escalating levy cost for maintenance of common property in the schemes. Like many pieces of legislation of acts passed during the apartheid era, the Sectional Title Amendment Bill requires a critical review, not just of the legislation, but of the institution charged with the responsibility to implement it. It is for this reason that there is a need for a fundamental paradigm shift away from a fragmented, unregulated, uncoordinated, and unsolvable legal ambiguities in the legislation. The Sectional Title Acts of 1973 and of 1986 have been amended several times without any major breakthrough from the basic structural principles which are steeped in institutional racism and segregation policies of the past. Unfortunately, all that has happened are mere cosmetic, superficial, and unsustainable make-ups over something requiring thorough and fundamental transformation. Time to transform the fragmented system has come. We as the economic freedom fighters reject this bill, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ma'am Tengwa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. On consideration of Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Land and Rural Development report of Sectional Title Amendment Bill, the IFP support the committee's report, and we agree with the specific amendment of the bill as proposed by the committee. The IFP has held that the bill is technically in nature and its practical implication will be felt to those who deal with the registration of the sectional title on a daily basis. It is therefore crucial for ensure that the views of experts of these areas are adequately incorporated. The proposed amendment must be practically enforceable and should not create additional obstacles to those who deal with the registration on the sectional title. The IFP is of the opinion of the committee was the pragmatic in the approach of the bill. Following public deliberation of the bill, it was clear that further amendment to the bill had to be made. In the deliberation on the bill, the committee had also become aware that other amendment of the sectional title at a may necessary. The committee, therefore, in line with the rules, National Assembly sought permission from the National Assembly to amend such provision as well. The specifically related to sections 54 to C of the Sectional Title Act, which require the sectional regulatory board to include 2 persons having knowledge of the sectional title development scheme. However, during the deliberation of the bill, it became clear that this requirement is no longer necessary, and the Sectional Title 6 Scheme Management Act of 2011 addresses this. The IFP therefore supports and agree with the specific amendment as proposed by the committee, and we trust that the bill will be finalized soon. We wish to reiterate the importance of the finalization of legislation and ensuring certain the industries regarding the situational requirement. The IFP supports the report of the committee. I thank you.
Stogoze Mamtlengwa, Honorable Briet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill aims to amend the Sectional Titles Act number 95 of 1986 with the objective of rectifying any shortfalls in the Act by refining certain definitions and providing clarifications of certain sections by the addition of words and subsections. The bill also introduces a number of additional regulations which largely regulate the management and development of schemes, including extensions and common property, with tenants and trustees less likely to be impacted. Some of the key proposed changes include to make it a requirement for developers to meet with every lessee of a building in instances where part of such building is to be wholly or partially let for residential purposes to answer questions put to the developer by the agents and of the lessees. To provide a certificate issued by an architect or land surveyor must comply with Section 26(2) of the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, where land is only allowed to be used for the permitted purposes. To provide for the amendment of sectional plans in respect of exclusive use areas, to provide for a developer to submit a plan for subdivision or consolidation to the Surveyor General for approval to subdivide, consolidate, and to extend a section. To provide the amendment and cancellation of a deed upon an order of court, make allowances for the filling and replacement of documentation in respect of lost or destroyed documents, and amending the provisions relating to the extension of a scheme. The bill also introduces a number of administrative requirements around issues such as subdivision and extension plans. As a committee, we also realized that there was a significant confusion between the Sectional Titles Act, which lies with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and which relates to registration and existence of sectional titles, and the Sectional Titles Scheme Management Act, which lies with the Department of Human Settlements. Many issues raised by members of the public related to management of sectional title schemes and were thus not relevant to the bill under consideration. The observation is not new or limited to the confusion of these two acts or this portfolio. Proper public participation with inputs applicable to the relevant bill needs to be a focus of this Parliament. Misunderstandings and confusion of acts is an occurrence that raises its head time and time again. It is worrisome and will need to be addressed by this House. That said, this bill proposes various amendments to the Act, which are of importance in the pursuit of complete and comprehensive legislation. This is necessary for the improvement and betterment of South Africa as a whole. Property ownership is an extremely important part of any economy. It is vital to sustain economic development, investment, and the creation of wealth. In the last 40 years, sectional titles have become more and more prevalent as the form of property ownership in South Africa. With the increasing demand for housing and ownership of such sectional title schemes, it is an important part of the future, and these amendments are significant in ensuring orderly sectional title development and registration. Private property rights should always be protected and is a fundamental right. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Kwankwa. I got a message that he will speak. He's gone again. Thank you. ATM, I don't have a name. Are you there? We proceed to the ANC and call on Honorable Chwete on the virtual platform. B. Chwete.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable House Chair, the African National Congress understands the importance of sectional title ownership in South Africa. There is an ever-increasing demand by citizens to own decent housing. Sectional titles refers to ownership of separate units within an estate development, such as flats, a block of flats, a complex, or townhouses. On one side, sectional title schemes are to be found in the urban areas and closer to social and economic amenities, reflective of the apartheid spatial planning patterns. On the other side, sectional titles are said to provide for a low-cost housing, which makes possible access to housing. Apartheid has created distorted spatial development patterns, and this had contributed to the lack of proper and decent housing for the majority of Black people. In dealing with this legacy of an abhorrent system of government, the portfolio on agricultural land reform and rural development was seized with the amendment of Sectional Titles Act 95 of 1986 in order to achieve a number of objectives and thus ensuring this apartheid piece of legislation is progressively in line with our democratic and constitutional ideals. The Congress of the People in 1955 declared that there shall be houses, security, and comfort for all. In adopting the Freedom Charter, the people of South Africa boldly asserted that all people shall have the right to live where they choose, to be decently housed, and to bring up their families in comfort. Honorable House Chair, this was in recognition of the fact that what the apartheid regime has created resulted in mass land hunger and the impoverishment of the Black majority, thus denying them an ability to create an asset base. The creation of an asset base provides a basis upon which generational wealth can be created. Our Constitution of the Republic, in Section 26, subsection 1, stipulates that everyone has the right to have access to adequate housing. Amongst many of the most important objects of the Sectional Title Amendment Bill is to provide that the certificate issued by an architect or a land surveyor must comply with Section 26, subsection 2 of the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act 16 of 2013. House Chair, in an indication that the amendment of Sectional Titles Act is informed by the democratic principle embedded in the notion of broader public consultation and involvement, not only legislative making, but in the development of the country. This kind of democratic participation is to be found in Section 4, subsection 3 of the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill, by providing that a developer must have a meeting with every lessee of a building in instances where part of such building is to be wholly or partly let for residential purposes. South Africa has the large component of the property market. Real wealth is found in the development and efficient land use management. Hence the importance of land use schemes. Land is a primary resource, a springboard for economic and social industries. Almost in direct correlation with increased land hunger, there has been over the years an increased hunger to own decent housing by citizens. It has been reported that in 2010, only about 13.5% of new residential buildings completed were sectional titles, and this number increased by 44.2% by 2019. It is reported that in 2019, sectional titles accounted for the largest share of the property market, sitting around 22%. The Land Audit Report of 2017 indicates private land ownership patterns by race, gender, and nationality, and found that women owned a total of about 3,668 hectares of sectional titles, the highest number being in Limpopo and Gauteng provinces, where individual women own a total of 1,057 hectares and 1,466 hectares, respectively. Section 18 of Amendment Bill makes applicable certain provisions for the deeds registry in relation to the transfer of mortgaged sectional titles unit and mortgage common property. In conclusion, Chair, the ANC supports the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill as a progressive piece of legislation in line with the country's developmental needs while ensuring that distorted apartheid spatial planning patterns are not replicable. I thank you, House Chair.
Siabulela, Madam Chair. The Honorable August.
House Chair, the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill, while a technical bill, serves as a very important purpose. The amendment bill seeks to rectify the confusion of the first iteration of the bill adopted in 1986. The Good Party believes that legislation, where possible, adopted pre-94 must be carefully looked at and brought into 21st century and aligned with our democratic dispensation. Additionally, among other things, the amendment bill seeks to do the following: provide for a developer to submit a plan for subdivision or consolidation to the Surveyor General for approval to subdivide, consolidate, and to extend a section, and provide for the noting of title deed in respect of lapsing or reservation in terms of Section 25. In general, good is for sectional title ownership system because it enables density and it also the most pragmatic way to transfer title deeds to residents of informal settlements, which are often our most vulnerable people who need these protections. Our Bill of Rights promises our people dignity and a decent standard of living. Security in your dwelling goes a long way to making a democratic promise a lasting reality. As such, Chairperson, we support the passing of the Section Title Amendment Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Sibisi.
House Chair, no declarations from NFP. Thank you.
Honorable Sibisi.
House Chair, there will be no declaration from NFP.
Okay. Thank you very much. AIC, PAC, Al-Jama. We proceed to the ANC, Honorable Kape.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, fellow South Africans. The African National Congress, as a progressive liberation movement, has committed itself to using land reform program to build productive assets for our people, whilst addressing the persistent reality of apartheid spatial separation, and by so doing, ensure adequate access to land in order to improve their livelihoods. Our contribution in this debate is informed by a premise that the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill deals only with the registration and existence of the current sectional title deeds. We are informed by content and substance and not phenomena when it comes to legislative making. We do remember that our land reform program is pillared on restitution, redistribution, and security of land tenure. Our country has a mixed land tenure system in respect of ownership of private property rights. To this end, and in fulfillment of the provisions found in the 1955 Freedom Charter, this Parliament has developed legislation that ensures that all South Africans have fair access to land use and ownership, and that there's no arbitrary restrictions to land use and benefit. Honorable Chapter has spoken to the important realization of provisions found in Section 26 of the country's constitution, and this being read together with Section 21 on freedom of movement and residence. The current democratic government is entrusted with responsibility and the mandate to enact pieces of legislation which would ensure the enjoyment of democratic gains and the realization of human dignity. The Sectional Title Amendment Bill, House Chair, makes 12 amendments, and this relates to issues such as common use space and other issues having to do with registration of sectional titles, as well as rights of property developers and sectional title deed holders. The amendment bill contains proposal made by the Sectional Titles Regulation Board, the Regulation Amendment Board, from meetings that took place between 2012 and 2016. In moving forward, a permission was granted to the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development to amend other provision of sectional titles in terms of Rule 286, subsection 4C of the National Assembly, and this process was opened up for further public consultations and a call for public comments. The ANC noted concerns raised during the public hearing process on the high cost of registration of sectional title property by members of the public and the impact that this would bear on low-cost housing developments. It is understood that due to challenges of shortage of access to land for residential property, sectional title ownership has provided many with access to adequate housing. As the ANC, we take note of concerns raised and we would hold that administration costs should not create a hurdle for those wishing to own property. We, however, House Chair, did not reject proposed amendments like some opposition parties who had resorted to blind rejection of the proposed amendments. Honorable Chairperson, we take note that South Africa has progressive legislative framework in response to the land question. We hold that more needs to be done to raise awareness around progressive pieces of legislation, including this very same one we're debating this afternoon. This would ensure that citizens take ownership of the laws of the land and ultimately defend them as responsible and patriotic citizens. Arguments made by the Democratic Alliance that this amendment bill does not consider the most vulnerable citizens during our debate in the Portfolio Committee, and that is not proper, is ill-informed and does not take into consideration that South Africa has broader land reform legislation that is proper and specifically crafted to protect the most vulnerable members of our society. Something that is quite contrary to what the apartheid legislation sought to do, and currently what the DA is attempting to reenact through gentrification found in spatial planning and development patterns in the Western Cape Province. Honorable Mbabama, ANC is mandated by its people to acquire and redistribute land as a means to economic development and creation of jobs. We started with the allocation and redistribution of 700,000 state land. We are on the amendment of sectional titles bills. We are going now for the expropriation of land without compensation, which is but one of the mechanisms to make sure that we attain land security tenure and issues of property and land ownership. As for the EFF, they are blinded by the fact that there's no magic wand in legislative making, and the development of progressive legislation cannot be done overnight, notwithstanding their conspicuous absence in portfolio committee meetings when we were discussing this bill. The EFF argues that they argue for state custodianship, and for this reason, so no need to meaningfully contribute to the development of legislation that will ensure that citizens' rights to land ownership is guaranteed. This is an indication, Chair, that the so-called freedom fighters have no understanding of land tenure system, and their one-size-fits-all revolution is inconsistent with aspirations and needs of and the hopes of our majority of the citizens. Thank you, Honorable Members, thank you from IFP for understanding and supporting this bill. Like we said, we have the view that issues of costs as raised should receive attention and that they should not become a hurdle in achieving good intentions of this bill. We appreciate the support from Honorable August. Honorable Chairperson, it is only the ANC that can progressively take South Africa's land question to its logical conclusion. And this is evident in the proposed amendment found in the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill. ANC lives and ANC leads. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We proceed now to allow the Minister to close the debate.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. And I'd like to thank all the speakers that participated in the debate, especially speakers from the ANC. And I would like to say to Honorable Mbabama, the results of the elections of November 1 indicate the mandate that the ANC have and where it comes from. So it can't be debatable, nor even question where does the ANC get its mandate. On other matters, we get our mandate from our members to be able to draft policy that becomes the government policy when we're in power and where we are in power. We acknowledge indeed that the electorate has spoken, they've given their votes in a proportional manner to various parties, and in certain instances, in a manner where there are hung parliaments. Hence, some of the members are not here, even from opposition parties, busy with the negotiations for the coalition, which seeks to actually address how, in the various councils, governance will be structured. So the issue of the mandate, Honorable Mbabama, if you don't know where it comes from, I think you need to go back to how, as parties, receive our vote from the electorate. I'd like to thank Honorable Briette for her intervention, particularly in clarifying where at times the confusion in various legislation is particularly on those matters that deal with sectional title, some of which lie in the legislation that is found in the Department of Agricultural and Reform and Rural Development, as we're debating today, and the others on the sectional title schemes, which actually lie in the Department of Human Settlement. And we commit that we will engage with the Department of Human Settlement to actually strengthen on those areas where members of Parliament, as well as the members of public, have indicated needs to be strengthened. Honorable Matthias, I take note of the concerns you have raised. However, it would have been helpful if such issues were raised in the Portfolio Committee. Honorable August, I agree with you that it is necessary that we need to review some of the legislation so that where there are conflicts, those conflicts are resolved, but where alignment is needed, that too is done. In all, I would like to say thank you to honorable members for supporting this bill, which indeed will assist us to progressively change the lives of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. Honorable members, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections. Agreed to. The second.
Honorable Chair, House Chair.
Yes.
The EFF, the EFF in the debate has objected to this bill. We once more reiterate that we are objecting to it.
Honorable member, please don't give a speech. We understand your objection and it is noted. The secretary will read the bill a second time.
Sectional Titles Amendment Bill.
Thank you very much. The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The secretary will read the seventh order. Honorable Magazi, please mute.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation, on provincial engagements on specific issues relating to water and sanitation sector.
Ndate Mashego. Etla o re tsopolele ka report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In quoting the president, the then president of the ANC and the country, in addressing the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg in 2002, he said, and I quote, "Among the many things that I learned as a president was the centrality of water in social, political, and economic affairs of the country." On that, the Freedom Charter also come and, among others, declare that all shall have equal rights. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa declares that water as a human right. Therefore, water cuts across the majority of human rights, such as those that relate to public health, dignity, property, food, land, property, and environment. The Constitution states that everyone has the right to have access to sufficient food and water. In this regard, the Portfolio Committee conducted a series of briefings between the 5th of June and the 16th of October 2020 on assessing the effectiveness in which concurrence function relating to the human settlement and water and sanitation are implemented, aligned and integrated into various provinces. The focus of these briefings associated with the following areas of discussions provided on an overview of provincial strategic plans aligned with national policies for the 2021 financial year. In summary, the briefings revealed that although the department has begun the institutional reform and realignment processes of ensuring sound policy and legislative framework to govern and guide the water resources management component of its work, the implementation of service provision in many municipalities is compromised due to challenges associated with capacity constraints, aging infrastructure, limited understanding of assigned concurrence functions, water services delivery by municipalities. Due to improperly managed water infrastructure by municipalities, there is a significant contamination of sources across the many South African municipalities. The focus of compliance to discharge water into streams and rivers has mainly been dependent on the National Department issuing directives and notices. In addition to this lack of increased oversight over grant funding, such as municipal infrastructure grant, the regional bulk infrastructure grant, and the water service infrastructure grant by the Department of Water and Sanitation and Treasury, results in this utilization of these grants on activities not aligned to the purposes of these grants. The ever-increasing debt owed to the water boards by the municipalities is also a cause of concern. To this end, the committee made a number of recommendations, among others being that the Department of Water and Sanitation through the Minister should undertake the following to address these impulses. 1, support municipalities to build sufficient economies of scale to be efficient and financially resourced to employ skilled managers, professional staff, and to raise sufficient capital funds for investment in essential water infrastructure, specifically for operations and maintenance, and fund solutions for areas with less development economies. To promote good governance in the water sector's institutions, thereby ensuring separation of policy-making, shareholding, and regulatory functions. The Department of Water and Sanitation should regularly ensure that blue and green drop assessment comply with the statutory requirement, which deal with the discharging affluent wastewater into streams and rivers. The department should provide progress reports on the various stages of project processes, including challenges associated with budget strengthening, your RBIC and your WISIG for grant promoting. The department and the respective water boards should provide a report with associated timeframes on action plans to provide concrete and tangible results on debt collections, governance issues, and water boards amalgamation to establish regional utilities. It is for this reason that we are asking that this report be adopted by this meeting, because it takes water as a right and as life. Thank you very much.
I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Portfolio Committee conducted a series of briefings between June and October 2020 that provided a synopsis of water and sanitation in all provinces. Within the water and sanitation sector, there are three fundamental objectives for managing South Africa's water, which are firmly grounded in the provision of the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. These are equitable access to water resources, sustainable water use, and efficient and effective water use for social and economic benefits. Chairperson, one of the critical challenges in water and sanitation is the inability of different spheres of government to fully implement the intergovernmental relations framework. Weak coordination between different spheres of government, as well as the ineffective implementation of national pieces of legislation, hampers the delivery of water and sanitation in provinces. Although the previous minister indicated that the verification and validation of existing lawful water use will be speeded up, we still see that this is not a priority within the department. Chairperson, the purpose of the verification and validation is to verify all existing lawful use, determine the status of water use and water registrations, as well as the determining of legality of new water uses. However, committee raised concerns on the discrepancies of the validation and verification system in relation to the building of illegal dams. The department must fast-track the verification and validation of existing lawful water use in all water management areas in order to ensure a speedy water allocation reform to address water needs in this country. Chairperson, the going concern of a number of water boards is a huge concern. The non-payment by municipalities already collapsed Sedibeng Water. Sedibeng can't pay electricity, pay salaries, or buy chemicals. Although the department and the minister is intervening in this matter, progress is slow, and the DA requests the minister to speed up the process so we could stabilize delivery of water to residents in Northwest and the Free State. Minister, you are the custodian of water in this country, and it's your responsibility to act if institutions like Sedibeng Water fail the people of South Africa in delivering of clean drinking water. Chairperson, we have a water crisis in some areas in this country, not because of drought, but because of poor infrastructure, corruption, and the mismanagement by ANC-run municipalities. I thank you.
The EFF.
Thank you, Chair. The briefing by the previous Portfolio Committee on Human Settlement, Water and Sanitation between the 5th June and 16 October 2020 on the effectiveness of concurrent functions and service delivery across the water value chain in provinces merely confirm the findings of the Auditor General on the state of municipalities in service delivery and financial management within concurrent competencies between local and national government. The ANC in the Portfolio Committee has been the champions pushing the agenda of the district development model. However, to date, no significant or valuable reporting or monitoring and evaluation of the once again failed new policy direction is yielding significant results. While the district development model may be theoretically okay, it is held back at an implementation level, and it is floundering amidst the malfeasance, corruption, and complete disregard for the basic principle of placing human dignity at the forefront of any excellent leadership. The findings of the briefing for each of the respective provinces briefly described here are that in Limpopo, the failed Giyani Water Project could not and still not providing water to the surrounding communities. Sekhukhune not having running water for over a decade. No monitoring by the National Department of Water and Sanitation on transgressions on illegal constructions of dams. In Northwest, the consequences of declining groundwater levels, water quality impacted due to effluent discharges, the Madiven refusal to affect a ministerial directive to assist with water and wastewater systems. In Western Cape, in Monwabisi, there's no water networks in the area. In Free State, once again, like Diani and Josini communities in the Free State, cannot access water from the Fontaine Dam. The Baguette eradication program is still an ongoing issue. Poor status of fresh water treatment plants, which continually contribute.
Honorable Peacock. Thank you. Proceed, ma.
The Baguette eradication program is still an ongoing issue. Poor status of wastewater treatment plants, which continually contribute to polluting water resources. In Mpumalanga, water struggles in areas such as Dr. J.S. Moroka and other regions of the province. No sound future policy directive by in areas such as Bushbuck Ridge that experience severe cases of
Honorable Peacock, ICT, please mute Honorable Peacock if you can't. If this happens again, I'm going to ask you to remove her immediately. Proceed, Honorable Mushala.
The new Minister, Minister Mtunu, recently at 2021 workshop of the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation, talked of the centrality of water security for the future in South Africa, but empty cliches and throwing concept without truly ensuring that the National Department undertakes its regularity and compliance authority without fear and favor is an ongoing tragic comedy that plays itself in the public domain. Making water accessible to all is not rocket science. It merely needs a dedicated government able to plan and execute plans without the corruption that has characterized this sector. The water boards need a complete revamp to fashion them as centers of excellence and not as dumping grounds for the corrupt. We support the recommendation of the report. Thank you.
The IFP.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. The right to access to clean water is enshrined in our Constitution. It is included in our Bill of Rights, not for cosmetic reasons, but to ensure that people live dignified lives in sanitary conditions that are not detrimental to their health. As such, we should be alarmed at the inability of the Department of Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation to adequately provide access to clean water across South Africa. While we acknowledge the challenges that impact on the provision of water, such as erratic and unreliable electricity supply, we should also be attuned to the reality that the department must pull up its socks. It is our view as the IFP that urgent steps need to be taken to ensure that the provision of clean and accessible prices, but that also prevent the contamination of water sources. Some of the necessary steps have already been highlighted. Suffice to say that two issues remain: the need for stakeholders to work together and the importance of enforcing municipal bylaws on water use and effluent treatment. Concerning the first issue, it is now common cause that all stakeholders must unite in the monitoring, development, and enforcement of laws at local government level to ensure that effluent from industries is of such a standard that it does not imperil the environment into which it is discharged. Stakeholder cooperation will ensure that the department is able to fully use the processes in the district development model to support municipalities and assist them in discharging their water
and Sanitation service delivery obligations. While the issue of concurrent environmental governed powers among the national, provincial, and local governments remains contested, the IFP believes that the Constitution provides an adequate framework to work out those challenges for the benefit of communities. On the second issue, capacity is important. Bylaws are in place to govern the discharge of wastewater effluent. However, municipalities must be able to enforce their water use authorization powers so as to ensure compliance. This will also necessitate effective enforcement of municipal plant guidelines on effluent nutrient levels before release of the water into the environment. The IFP supports it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mam Buthelezi. Proceed to FF Plus. FF Plus. Okay. We will bring them in if they come back before time. ACGP. The ACGP is not declaring. UDM. Not. ATM. Good. Honorable August. No. NFP.
Thank you, House Chair. We recently saw reports of Eastern Cape communities that have approached the Mthatha High Court to force a response from the provincial and national governments over access to water. House Chair, it is with grave concern that in over 27 years of this democracy, our people are still having challenges accessing water and sanitation. Some villages in the Eastern Cape have only been given 2 water tanks for 8 villages, which are about 20 kilometers apart from one another. These tanks were not even properly mounted and had not been refilled. Needless to say that municipalities are running away instead of fixing the problems. Surely, water must be a basic human right, and the lack therefore continues to affect our people even in the new dispensation. Chair, take for example the community of Umhlabialingana in the northeastern side of KZN, where just over 172,000 people live in the area. Only about 46% of household gets water from a regional or local service provider.
You have muted yourself, Honorable CBC, please. We can't hear you now.
12% of the people who live in the area have no access to toilets.
Muted.
Have access to flushing. The remote areas of this country remains further and further off the periphery, while local municipalities continue to face service delivery with absolute impunity. We saw the same thing happen in the village of Kuno in the Eastern Cape. The people in that community have been lamenting about their taps being dry for 8 months. They use the same water as livestock and dogs. The pump station was switched off after the OR Tambo District Municipality failed to pay an ESCOM account. The national government cannot simply let these matters be dealt with only by the municipalities and provincial governments. Interventions have to be strict and effective. Otherwise, our people are reduced to the level of Izinja by being forced to share water with dogs and livestock. We have to have Noma Sishawe Amahloni House Chair. In fact, it is becoming more and more evident that service delivery is about race in this country. The department reported that in 2016, only 65% of households had access to reliable supply of water. In their poorest rural districts, that figure was 37%. You know, we saw reports about how technicians in Uku district, KZN, carry guns while fixing water infrastructure to protect themselves from workers fired as a result of political infighting in the municipality. The society ripple effect of poor service delivery is detrimental to the society that we want to build. Many of the challenges that we face in this country are self-inflicted. In Kiani, Limpopo, despite billions of rand spent in the response to a drought that hit the area in 2010, the community still does not have source secure water supply. So the department can come here and grandstand about plans and engagement and consultation, but these interventions do not translate to reality, nor do they improve our people's lives because of corrupt officials and incapacitated people in critical positions.
AIC, COPE, PAC, Al-Jama, the ANC.
Thank you very much, House Chair and honorable members and fellow South Africans to Melang. The ANC rises in support of the report on the engagement with provinces and water boards held over a period of 5 months in 2020 to have a holistic picture on the business plans for the 2020-2021 financial year and towards the implementation of the district development model. The introduction of this DDM is critical in ensuring the planning and financial support is streamlined into one plan and one budget by different government organs in a district to respond to a developmental need of a district at a social and economic level. Honorable members, one of the critical challenges of water and sanitation as a concurrent function at a national and provincial level is the inability of different government spheres to implement the intergovernmental relations framework fully. The principles guiding the district development model as described by the Department of COGTA aims to improve the coherence and the impact of government service delivery with its focus on 44 districts and 8 metros around the country as development spaces that can be used as centers of service delivery and economic development, including job creation. South Africa, yes, it's a water scarce country, and this creates a responsibility of all water users to utilize water in a sustainable way. Water use management in a water scarce country requires the people to be orientated to use water as a resource which should be stored and used effectively. The reports and the briefings received from different provincial departments and water boards reflected some of the key challenges affecting water service authorities. We looked deeper, yes, into the challenges in the Giyani water projects, the Sikukuni in Limpopo, the Madibem municipality in the northwest, Bushbuck Ridge in Mpumalanga, and many other locations throughout the country. Honorable members, one of the major weaknesses in the sector is the aging infrastructure, which results to a high level of water wastages. Another major weakness for water boards is around the revenue collection, which has been highlighted by the chairperson of the portfolio of the current portfolio committee on water and sanitation, to ensure sustainability of wastewater treatment works that we have in the country. Many of the wastewater treatment works plans are facing challenges of poor operational planning and maintenance. Different water chemicals should always be on site to ensure that quality of water is discharged and distributed. The implication of dysfunctional water treatment plants is the discharge of contaminated water to the river system, which negatively affects the environment and different water users. Honorable members, focus of compliance to discharge water into streams and rivers has mainly been dependent on the national department issuing directives and notices, but there is a need to begin seriously engaging on enforcement of bylaws at the local government level. What is important about this report is the fact that it contains key recommendations, as other honorable members have indicated, which the portfolio committee has been focusing on during the previous and the current year, including the current process of the BRR reports, to respond to the challenges affecting the department and the water and the sanitation sector. It was critical for the portfolio committee to meet different key institutions to ensure that it continues its monitoring and oversight on key projects, which should result in the accountability of key recommendations. Amongst the different recommendations, the Portfolio Committee also recommended intervention by the Department of Water and Sanitation to develop an institutional framework or guidelines that clearly defines the roles, the responsibilities and accountability within the entire water and sanitation value chain. Consequence management also is another area which is experiencing slow progress. And the framework and guideline will enable accountability to be distinguished to employees with particular roles. One of the challenges is the issue of dams that are illegally constructed without receiving official approvals. Farmers that illegally build dams should also be addressed to ensure distribution of water to surrounding communities and other water users. Honorable members, water quality is also a critical area of this report, and progress can be observed in the State of Nation address presented in 2021 by the President of the country, when he announced the reintroduction of the green and the blue drop reports to assess the state of quality water, the state of wastewater treatment plants and water infrastructure in our country. Honorable House Chair, the ANC support this report as it represents the comprehensive focus by the Portfolio Committee to respond to the challenges affecting all the 9 provinces. And we continue to ensure accountability in the implementation of these recommendations. We are confident that the Water Master Plan, as adopted by government, and the major projects that have been undertaken will contribute in expanding access to water in the rural areas, in informal settlement, and towns affected by lack of water. Ke a leboga, House Chair. The ANC supports the report. Thank you.
Go leboga rona me sosibepi wenhlangano enkulu ke usinikele umhlahlandlela.
Thanks, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Abekho abaphikisako kaloko imukeliwe. Siyaqhubeka siya ku order number 8. Nobala.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation on the 2020-2021 first quarter financial and non-financial performance of the Department of Human Settlement.
Thank you. Ntate Mashego.
Honorable members, the Constitution provides that everyone shall have the right of access to adequate housing. Since the dawn of democracy, our ANC government has been making every effort to ensure that the majority of South Africans who for the longest time had been denied this right get access to housing. It is also noted that the housing needs of our people are growing at a rapid pace, faster than the supply. The 2020-2021 financial year was a challenging year for the department and its entities due to COVID-19 pandemic, which had a huge impact on the housing sector. This report provides a reflection on the expenditure and non-financial performance of the department by the end of the financial year, by the end of the first quarter for the 2021 financial year. The overview of the expenditure in this first quarter, as it stated. The main appropriation of the department for 2020-21 was an amount of about 31.3 billion rand. By the end of the quarter, the department spent only 4.3 billion rand of this amount. This is due to the fact that, as we all know, there was COVID and buying and moving of goods was a little bit difficult. This was mainly attributed to transfers that were not made to public. That was not made to public. And you will know that in the rental social housing program, affordable housing program, and the integrated